And a procedural rule is basically a sequence of actions that one can take in order for you to solve a given problem. Okay, so let's say, for example, steps on how you can cook ugali, steps on how you can cook chapo. That is a procedural rule. Steps on how you develop a software system. You understand the problem, then you collect data, you convert that data into a design, and then after the design, you program, and then you have the system. I think guys needs to, there are people joining, and I may not be able to be breaking through to admit them. Ask people to join using their KU account, because I understand there is no student who does not have a KU account. So that really we are not disrupted from discussions. Yeah, so then of course there is what we call heuristic, a rule of thumb based on years of experience. So one may not go to school to study about medicine, but if you have been in the medicine field, you have been observing over time, then now that becomes what you call an heuristic. It's a rule of thumb that somebody has gained based on experience. So therefore, all these three components form what we call knowledge, which we can define as an understanding that is obtained through the process of experience or appropriate study. So experience is where you come across something and you keep on doing it. So over time, you gain experience over it. Alternatively, you can study. For example, you could go to River Road and you will find people who never studied computer or IT, and they are, designing banners, graphics and printing. So they have gained that knowledge through experience. When you observe somebody do repetitively, and so you are able to, by observation or even by doing, gain experience. The other way, of course, how we can be able to gain knowledge is through appropriate study, taking a material and going through that material again and again. And how do we relate knowledge to intelligence? So, of course, the ability to be able to acquire this knowledge in itself now becomes intelligence. So intelligence implies the capability to acquire and apply. So how do we do that? We do that because we're able to have the memory, which is able to, which is able to store and retrieve. So when you go to the library and you're able to learn, then by the end of the day, you can be able to, observe that knowledge, which in other words goes to the memory or within our brain. And any time that you need that information, you can be able to retrieve. So that is one capability that actually qualifies one to be an intelligent person. So the capability that you're able to store and retrieve. Then the other thing is the learning aspect. The learning aspect, which will now imply that you keep on acquiring new knowledge, okay? And this new knowledge, of course, could be through instruction or through study. Okay, so of course, now that relates that when you talk about knowledge, it's related to intelligence, because now how do you acquire this knowledge and how do you store it? I am mentioning this because you cannot be able to develop a computer system that is able to mimic what human beings do if, in case you are not able to know how this knowledge can be stored, and retrieved. And at the same time, the aspect of machine learning or the aspect of deep learning, you may not be able to tell them how this computer can be able to gain knowledge. And of course, just to mention that, this knowledge is what we gain over time through experience, through study. And of course, at times there is what we call common sense knowledge. These are opinions that exist, and you simply find yourself applying them even without reflecting. It is very, I mean, I don't know. Whoever wakes up and thinks that I need to dress and get out of, my bedroom, it's automatic that you can't wake up and, start moving and going to the university where you are naked. So that is common knowledge, which refers to the natural and mostly unreflective opinion of human beings. Okay, if you were driving and you were overtaking and you see an oncoming car, it is common. You may not be able to reflect that now you get back to your lane, and at times you actually do it without knowing. Okay, and of course, the other aspect that we need to understand, of course, I've tried to build it, from our previous lessons, is what we call cognitive psychology, which tries to identify the cognitive structures and the processes that closely relate to skilled performance within an area of operation. And the cognitive psychology provides a background for understanding knowledge and expertise. So in other words, what is it that constitutes human intelligence? Then that is what you call experimental psychology. Yani, the ability to be able to understand, okay, what a kind of a knowledge and an expert is somebody has, then wezitoa the aspect of cognitive psychology. So there are two components. There is what you call experimental psychology, which studies the cognitive processes that constitute human intelligence. Then there's what you call now artificial intelligence, which is basically about the study of the cognition of computer-based intelligence systems. So what do? We try to understand how human beings processes knowledge, and therefore by the end of the day, they become experts. Then once we do that, the next question or the next task is, how do we then transfer this kind of cognition to the computers? Therefore, the aspect of artificial intelligence. Then, of course, just a moment. So, again, just to mention, we study cognitive psychology because by the end of the day, again, in the field of artificial intelligence, there is the aspect which I have already mentioned, the existence of expert systems or knowledge-based systems, which imply that if today we were to construct a knowledge-based system, then we need knowledge. This knowledge exists in human experts. So therefore, you got to understand what cognitive psychology is for you to now be able to go and elicit or correct information from experts, and then be able to represent that knowledge in a way that the computer can be able to, have. So the person who goes to collect the information from what you call human experts or domain experts is a knowledge developer. Okay, and so in order to gather the knowledge from human experts, the developer usually interviews the experts and asks for information regarding a specific area. So as you keep on interviewing, therefore there's a way, and I think that should be around There's another topic that we're supposed to cover on how this knowledge can be represented and stored in a computer. And of course, one other aspect that we need to understand is that in as much as there are people who have this knowledge and we need to interview them and so that we can be able to get this knowledge, it is not usually possible for us to accurately collect and actually represent the information as it is within the mental capabilities or the mental processes or faculties of an expert. So therefore, the research area of cognitive psychology helps us to have a better understanding of what constitutes knowledge, how this knowledge can be collected or received, and how it should be represented in a corporate knowledge base. So if you go today to interview a doctor, how do you diagnose? So the doctor will perhaps maybe tell you that first of all, you need to listen to the history of the patient. So therefore, there's a way this information is coming, and we understand the human expert has got a brain. Initially, having gone to study, the human anatomy and the way disease spreads and all those other things, the factors, so they are able to. So if we were to build a knowledge base to do what a doctor does, then we must be able to, collect this knowledge. Some of them have already collected about, several diseases, the symptoms, and the link between a symptom and. So the whole aspect about cognitive psychology, therefore, is for us really to be able to understand what is knowledge, how can we collect it, and how can we be able to represent. So the representation I'm talking about is now the storage of this knowledge in computer-based systems. Therefore, cognitive psychology ends up contributing a great deal to the area of what we call knowledge management. So before we proceed again, it's very important to understand the difference between data, information, and knowledge. And I think somewhere else, maybe this information has been discussed. So data, of course, usually represents raw information, unorganized or unprocessed facts. If, for example, you did a cut, and therefore I have got of all the students and what they performed, cut 1, cut 2, and the examinations, and that is it. So that is what you call unorganized or unpresented facts. So a student record and the cuts they did and the results is a fact. But you see, if you can be able to process, allow me use again that word, or aggregate that information for purposes of decision making, it means that I'm able to analyze and know what was the total grade or what grade did the student perform, how many had A's, how many had B's, and all those things. Now that information, that data, when you process it, becomes information. If, for example, today we do a survey and the students are being asked, how did you perform in high school? What subjects? So you respond through a survey and that information goes to the database. That is data. But now, and therefore this data represents a set of discrete facts about events. And it is what we need before we have information. Okay, so therefore, data is usually static in nature. You may not use it to make decisions. So there is usually a need that you employ different techniques for you to be able to organize that data into what we call information. So information actually is what I can actually say is like processed facts or processed data. That is why, by definition, we can actually say that information can be considered as an aggregation of data, and this data we are saying into brackets has been processed, and therefore it will be able to make decision making easier. And this information usually has got some meaning. So tuseme kama uko na graph, uko na pie chart, uko na, like you can actually have this with a meaning and with a purpose. Now, having understood what data is and also what knowledge is, or sorry, what information is, the question is again, what is knowledge? So knowledge, again, like I said, is, what you understand as a human about a subject matter. What you understand, that is knowledge. So, and we said that this knowledge can be acquired through study or through experience. Knowledge is usually obtained through learning, thinking, and the proper understanding of the problem area. And by the way, one other thing that you need to understand even before we proceed, you can have information, but information itself is not knowledge. Okay? Like, for example, if we watch a video on how an operation can be done, or the procedure of doing an operation, that is knowledge, information. But having information is not knowledge. Now, maybe perhaps the example that I can use, there are people disturbing me, and I said that you need to join our class using the corporate emails. So what I need to say is that you can go to class, read about AI, understand about AI, but if, for example, you are not able to develop an expert systems so that you bring AI to practice, then you are not knowledgeable. Is like, for example, to say there's an examination tomorrow, so you go and cram the notes. And therefore, what you end up having is actually an accumulation of information. So that is what we're saying. Knowledge is not information, and information itself is not data. So although knowledge is derived from information, in the same way, information is derived from data. A doctor is a knowledgeable person because number one, huyu mtu alienda class akasoma for 7 years, akaenda kwa field aka-apply, na amerudi sasa ana-apply the information into a given domain, that is medicine or treatment. And therefore we can view it, knowledge is an understanding of information based on its perceived importance or relevant to a problem. So in other words, if I can borrow the, really, I didn't want to take you to the Bible, but if we can borrow the definition of knowledge from the Bible, I think in the book of Genesis, that 6, knowledge is like having a skill, the ability to do, allow me use this example. If you want to go to a driving school, they will give you that model road and a roundabout, and they will ask you, this is the inner lane, this is the other lane, this is the second, this is the third, and they will give you that, that car, which ideally is like a robot or some cardboard, okay? So, and you will be told all those things. That is information. But by the end of the day, having the ability to take now an existing actual car on the road is what we call knowledge. Now, so that is why we are saying that is like applying information and making it relevant in a certain, and therefore knowledge can be considered as an integration of human perceptive processes that help them to draw meaningful conclusions. Okay? So I hope, I don't know whether there is a question or any comment in regards to what we are discussing. Maybe somebody can ask a question or can comment or can type something there for me to know that you are following. Any question? Any comment? Okay, Rita, thanks for giving me a thumbs up, so that I'm able to know that you are following. So I think we proceed now. I believe you're able to relate data, information, and knowledge, and of course, it has to be to try to be relevant. By the end of the day, what do you think will demonstrate that you are a computer scientist or you're a mathematician? We keep on learning, we apply, we start designing algorithms, we start modeling. Therefore, by the end of the day, what may initially be seen as a way of going to, kama for example when you are new in coding. So new in coding, you like unapata like uko na documentation hapa ama unashinda ukiuliza mtu, or you go to any source to keep on checking code, errors and all those things, but you keep on coding now and then itafika time too, like the knowledge or the syntax about that language already is in the mind. Therefore, you can actually sit down and within a few minutes, you've written maybe 1,000 lines of code. And of course, knowledge as know-how. There's another way on how you can be able to accumulate knowledge. These are lessons that you obtain through a practical experience. So again, you may not necessarily go to driving school, but if you've got maybe somebody who knows how to drive, puts you in the steering, in front of a steering, and tells you this is, accelerator, this is the steering, this is this, these are brakes, and all those things. Therefore, you keep on accumulating that. So you got, that. There's also what we call common sense. Common sense is actually the type of knowledge that is almost known by every human being. And of course, it can vary in form and, it is common sense that when you feel pressed, you don't just, squat wherever you are and you do your stuff. That is common knowledge. It is common knowledge that, when you feel thirsty, you go for water, you feel hungry, this is knowledge that is almost available to every. It is common knowledge that when you wake up, no one will tell you to dress up. Okay, and of course, having this bit which I'm talking about, reasoning. We obtain knowledge through reasoning, and reasoning, there's what you call deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, which of course I think maybe in the next topic, if we can be able to have time, we can be able to learn more about that. So there are also other types of knowledge. Uh, these ones are categories of knowledge. How we categorize and place the different types of knowledge. But in terms of the different types, we have what you call procedural knowledge, which represents the the specific sequence on how to carry a specific task. Procedural knowledge. If you were to be given a car and you were told, drive that car, do you simply go in and, take an ignition and you ignite? Or as a driver, you got to maybe open the bonnet and check the level of oil, check, the coolant and the other things, look at the wheels, they well pressured and the other things, then you go to ignite. I'm just giving you a general. But really, when you talk about procedural knowledge, this is just a sequence of actions that one can take in order to solve a given task. There's what you call also declarative knowledge, which is a routine knowledge about which the expert is conscious. It is shallow knowledge in some sense that can be readily be recalled when it is required. It is usually simple and uncomplicated information. And this type of knowledge often resides in the short-term memory. Okay, then there's what we call semantic knowledge, highly organized, chunked information that resides in the long-term memory and can include major concepts, vocabulary, facts, relationships, and many other things. Okay. Then there's what you call episodic knowledge, which represents the knowledge based on episodes or experimental information. So in this case, each episode is usually chunked in long-term memory. There's what you call meta-knowledge, knowledge about knowledge. When you write code, there's what you call meta-information. Yani, like information explaining about some existing some existing problem. So I think that is what we have about knowledge, the categories and the different types. And there's what we call also expert knowledge. Expert knowledge now, this is knowledge that is available in the mind of an expert. So the expert has this information to help them solve a complex problem. And of course, like I have already said, this knowledge or information is usually stored in chunks. And the chunking, I don't know, ni kama like it could break a big problem into small ones. So the chunking actually usually helps the experts to optimize their memory capability by enabling them to process the information quickly. Yani like kila mtu kuna vile like if you know this then this then this. Allow me just to give you a basic one. Ni kama for example, at the times when people are memorizing, unapata like there's a way everyone has or yani kila mtu kuna vile anaweza memorize information. Somebody could come up with an abbreviation that can represent something. So that abbreviation is like a junk or a way of storing that particular information so that you can be able to quickly recall it. Ni kama for example vile mtu unajiorganize either in the library so that you can be able to quickly go retrieve a book because you know if this then this and this and this. So chunks therefore are groups of ideas that are stored and recalled together as a unit. Ni kama for example for a doctor I presume, si unaona kuna yule wa neurosurgeons, kuna ule wa labda mifupa and all those things, but unaweza pata in as much as there's a specific doctor with a specific information. Kuna wale wa like general physicians, so like kama ni hii information inaweza kuwa retrieve this as a unit so that it can be able to help somebody in a surgery, in something, and so on and so forth. Is like a mechanic. Mechanic anaweza fungua engine ya gari, unaona, so unapata like akifungua engine kuna vile atachipanga, so by the end of the day the whole engine is down, many pieces, more than 500 pieces, na atarudisha tu zote, and the car will be able to move. So I think we've discussed a lot about knowledge. So by the end of the day, what we are actually saying is that knowledge is an attribute of an expertise. So you cannot say that you are an expert in a certain area if you do not have facts, information, and actually what we end up saying is specialization, an accumulation of knowledge in a certain area by the end of the time. And of course, in order for you to become an expert in a particular area, one is expected to master the necessary knowledge and make significant contributions to that domain or that field. And by the end of the day, how will you tell that indeed this person is an expert? Is, the quality of decision making that this person is able to make out of the knowledge that they are able to have. And by the end of the day, of course, it is good to be an expert, because just like we can say, you cannot be a jack of all trade and perform. So, and I will use an example. Say computer science has got, programming or software development, there's backend, there's front end, there's user interface design, there's graphic design, there's networking, there's now AI, and many other aspects. So for you really to be an expert, you must choose one and go deep. And of course, keep on, accumulating these through study, through experience, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So I think we come to the end of our discussion. So really, in our next class on Friday, we will be talking about knowledge-based systems, so that now we are able to know what knowledge is, how now you can be able to develop an expert system from, or a knowledge-based system, given knowledge that you can be able to collect. So I don't know whether there's a question from our discussions today or any question regarding our course. So any question? Yeah. Kinyua Kinoti. Actually, information is processed data. When you've processed the data, then you have information. Every end of our class, I usually share the notes. So Kirui, I have always shared our notes. So you will still be able to have the notes either today or Friday morning. Yeah, thank you so much, Retemo.